Age of transparency. Quote, there are only two mistakes one can make along the road to truth: not going all the way and not starting. End quote. Gautama Buddha. Members of the so-called New World Order have been positioning themselves for an American power grab since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was established in the United States. In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt ordered the all-seeing eye to be placed upon $1 bills, along with the motto, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is Latin for a new order of the ages. The power base that would have us controlled by their agenda from the cradle to the grave is, for the first time in history, feeling the pressure of a new game changer called the internet. Now ordinary citizens can discuss the diabolical agenda of the cabal, comment on websites, and share images. The internet is only a starting point for an age of transparency, a new dawn when lies and secrets cannot be covered up any longer. The seismic impact that the internet and social media have had on established power structures worldwide is nothing short of remarkable. For the first time in history, ordinary citizens can communicate in times of adversity, gather during martial law, and post their own ideas, photos, and videos. Social media has become a new avenue for the collection and distribution of the news. Unless governments become more accountable to their citizens and more transparent in their operations, they will face eventual downfall. This is part of a larger movement seeking greater governmental and corporate transparency. With the combination of internet connectivity and transparency, a new oversight by citizens is emerging. Social media allows the opportunity for more people to see, share, and shape what is going on around them. Suddenly, the powers that were will find themselves more exposed than they have ever been. The result is a huge increase in social energy, which is being channeled in all different directions and may even lead to the downfall of once powerful Western governments. The policy of truth. After the tumultuous Arab Spring, when online protesters and social media played a crucial role in overthrowing unpopular leaders in northern African countries, and at a time when WikiLeaks military source Bradley Manning was put on trial, keeping the internet free, or net neutrality, has never been under greater assault than it is now. The clash between power, truth, access, transparency, and a small d democracy is unfolding in our new hyper-networked world. Inspired by WikiLeaks and the urgent debates that have been ignited by that phenomenon and its founder, the internet is changing the status quo and may never be the same. Author and lecturer David Icke warned a few years back that anti-pirating laws will be used as an excuse to shut down the internet. Under closer examination, we learn the same entertainment companies leading the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA, charge against copyright piracy and suing students and single moms for thousands of dollars are the very same companies who originally designed and distributed pirating software. CBS Viacom co-branded with CNET and other media sites to release the file sharing software BitTorrent. Time Warner and MSN supported Kazaa. Disney supported and then sued the Scour search engine. And there are other examples of big media companies inducing users to piracy. SOPA was one big bait and hook scam perpetuated by big media to control the internet in order to have us watch their content exclusively. Now we are seeing big media take over and control some of the social media platforms and begin to censor YouTube channels and other outspoken media providers in the alternative media. The US government is diligent and obsessive in defending its borders against invaders. We are now told that a small international band of renegades armed with nothing more than laptops will present the greatest threat to the US regime since the close of the Cold War. The National Defense Authorization Act, almost unanimously backed by the Senate and passed in the House of Representatives, contains language that allows the Pentagon to effectively wage a cyber war on any domestic enemies of the state. Yet in 2015, it was declared that if China engages in cyber attacks against the USA interests, that will be considered an act of war. The NDAA was largely in response to the WikiLeaks release of a massive trove of secret official documents which embarrassed and riled politicians. They seek to limit the truth extent in which the internet can be used as a tool to make the governments more accountable for its policies, judgments, and actions. However, this argument cuts both ways. The government cautions that if we are not doing anything wrong, we have no reason to fear government censorship. Yet citizens can counter that if their government were not doing anything improper, it would have no reason to fear free speech. A true democracy with a capital D would require government officials to be accountable to the citizens who elected them to office. In all circumstances, they would remain beholden to the wishes of the people. A true democracy would consider it treasonous, for example, if elected officials in any way undermine the people's right to free speech, their right to a fair trial, or their right to protection from indefinite detention. A true democracy would aggressively protect the open and free forum provided by the internet. Instead, the National Defense Authorization Act, S.1867, signed into law on New Year's Eve of 2012, which authorized the president to detain U.S. citizens indefinitely without trial, reverses these assumptions. Fortunately, the SOPA and PIPA internet censorship bills were shelved after a major backlash of protest from internet users. In fact, some of the largest websites went black for a day on January 18, 2012 in protest. As soon as citizens fight back, another arcane law is created. Because on May 1st, 2012, with little or no mass media coverage, then President Obama signed Executive Order 13563, declaring international law to apply to the United States. This order can be used to institute gun confiscation laws without any consent by our Congress or judicial oversight. And once these foreign laws are brought to the United States under the various security agreements, foreign troops could be brought in to enforce these foreign laws upon citizens of the United States. Suddenly, our once grand democracy is looking like no democracy at all. Countering propaganda. If we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, it is not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without them knowing it. These are inquiries by Edward Bernays, former U.S. presidential advisor, from his book, Propaganda. Quote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our government. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of." End quote. You have to ask yourself, do we really learn anything about politics from TV announcers? Or are we simply repeating what we've been programmed to say by clever TV propaganda? It seems that most of our mainstream media has stopped investigating news stories a while ago. Our journalists have been replaced with teleprompt scripted readers. The lamestream media only works for unthinking people who do not know the truth, who ignore history, and especially for those who did not do their own independent research. It only works for those who naively believe everything they hear. President Richard Nixon knew the power of propaganda when he stated, quote, "The American people don't believe anything until they see it on television," end quote. The modern human is utterly saturated by advertising and political messaging every day. Few realize the pervasive powers of propaganda or how to possibly counter it. One way is to go live in the woods and shut oneself off from any media messages. Another way is to recognize propaganda by understanding its programming effect, so it is then rendered transparent. To be effective, propaganda must constantly short-circuit all logical reasoning. Ideally, it must operate on the individual at the unconscious level. This kind of subliminal seduction works best when people do not even realize that they are being manipulated by outside forces and operates below the threshold of consciousness. With the emergence of the visual media, primarily television, it became possible to use propaganda techniques to saturate the entire culture and to shape thoughts and opinions of the masses. The orchestration of press, radio, film, and television created a continuous, lasting, and all-pervasive environment that is hard to escape. Mass media provides the essential link between the individual and the demands of our technological society. But what we think we know is not always the way things really are. The first step to countering propaganda is to recognize that there is a very organized perception-shaping apparatus called the controlled mass media, which is the real silent weapon for a quiet war. The battle for transparency. WikiLeaks has announced that their ongoing battle will be to ensure that the internet does not turn into a vast surveillance tool for governments and corporations. According to Julian Assange, the internet itself has become, quote, the most significant surveillance machine that we have ever seen, end quote. He was referring to the unethical use of the detailed information people give about themselves online. Quote, it's not an age of transparency at all, he said. In fact, quote, the amount of secret information is more than ever before, end quote, adding that information flows in, but does not flow outward from governments and other powerful organizations. Quote, I see that really is our big battle. The technology gives and the technology takes away, end quote, he concluded. Although information disseminated by the WikiLeaks website is often bothersome to governments, there is sometimes no other way to tackle the problem in light of the oppressive atmosphere which characterizes the flow of information. WikiLeaks believes that since people are now living at a time when freedom of information is under assault, we all must remain vigilant, and in a way, all become watchdogs. Political analyst and author Micah Sifry argues that WikiLeaks is not the entire story involved with protecting freedom of information. WikiLeaks is one example of calling attention to a problem and taking action. It is one indicator of an ongoing generational and philosophical struggle between older, closed systems and the new open culture of the internet. Despite Assange's house arrest, the publication of secret documents endures. Just as the closure of Napster failed to stop unauthorized music file sharing, the US government's draconian crackdown on WikiLeaks will also be futile. Even if the website is forced to shut down, many new whistleblower sites are erupting to follow its model. The annual Reporters Without Borders report in 2014 showed the United States dropping 14 points on the freest media list to 46th place due to the pursuit of NSA leaker Edward Snowden and the Justice Department's seizure of AP phone records in an effort to find the source of a CIA link. Other countries in the Middle East that cracked down on journalists also took big falls in the rankings. Reporters Without Borders use a simple equation for their rankings: the absence or suppression of civil liberties, which leads to the suppression of media freedom. Dictatorships fear free speech and ban information, especially when it may undermine their rule. Quote, never has freedom of information been so closely associated with democracy. Never have journalists, through their reporting, vexed the enemies of freedom so much, end quote, the group said in a statement accompanying its report. Human intuition. Deception is at an all-time high, although intuition is slightly in the lead. In these confusing times, we could all use an effective perception meter to separate the wheat from the chaff. For those of us who seek to hone our intuition, first it is important to believe we can attain enhanced human capabilities. And one of these is the ability to distinguish between truth and lies. As these perceptual abilities become developed, nothing but the truth will hold meaning. Lies and deception will appear as a telltale aura field surrounding the perpetrator. Those who would do us harm, either physically or with their words and actions, will become exposed until they themselves feel self-conscious. Sooner or later, every liar will become aware of their appearance to others and decide to change their ways. Until then, it is up to us to be the best possible individuals we can be, and this will increase our own intuition abilities. This is absolutely essential. We must each adopt a policy of no lying, cheating, stealing, or any other dishonest action. Nothing works except a complete personal devotion to honesty and truth. Once developed, the personal ability to detect dishonesty will also allow people to finally know themselves at their core, their spiritual selves. As soon as we can realize that we are truly one with everyone, indeed with everything on the planet and the cosmos beyond, suddenly we allow the cleansing away of that which has enslaved us in the false illusion we now face in the world. The visionary mystic and poet William Blake said it best, quote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite," end quote. The idea of attuning to a greater human perception is nothing new and is usually achieved through some kind of meditation practice. Originally used in Hinduism and Buddhism, a mantra is a word or sound repeated to aid concentration in meditation. A mantra is also a Vedic hymn, and in Sanskrit literally means, quote, "instrument of thought," end quote. A yantra is a geometric diagram or any object used as an aid to meditation and tantric worship, fair and equal among all. The idea of attuning to a greater human perception is nothing new and is usually achieved through some kind of meditation practice. Originally used in Hinduism and Buddhism, a mantra is a word or sound repeated to aid concentration in meditation. A mantra is also a Vedic hymn, and in Sanskrit literally means, quote, "instrument of thought," end quote. A yantra is a geometric diagram or any object used as an aid to meditation in tantric worship. In Sanskrit, a yantra is literally a, quote, "device for holding or fastening," end quote. Tantra refers to a mystical or ritual text involving mantras. Meditation, yoga, and ritual. Adapting these Eastern techniques to the West, the New Thought movement, originating in the 19th century, has at its core a belief that a higher power pervades all existence. Auras around people and other life forms appear subtly to the trained eye. Individuals can create their own reality, more accurately, their experience here, via affirmations, meditation, and prayer. Early New Thought groups emerged from a Christian Science background, and some New Thought writers refer back to selected portions of the Bible as their foundation text. Other New Thought groups dismiss any biblical connection. Developing greater human intuition is also in our best interests, as it will help each of us obtain a healthy, happy, and more meaningful life experience. Eventually, all lies will be known and forgotten, and only truth will hold up to the test of time. Meanwhile, orient yourself to the highest standards of ethics today and live by them with no exceptions. Your personal credo must remain a directive that never wavers. It is a deal made only between you and you. Orient yourself to humbly being in service to others. Make nonviolence your unwavering conviction for conflict resolution. Lose your ego and surrender to a force greater than yourself in the universe. Call it by any name God has ever been called, or call it nothing at all. Even an atheist can recognize a life force pervading within every creature struggling to survive. Humble yourself before a larger conscious universe inhabiting everything. Be aware that what you are hearing in your mind can be of assistance to your growth, and reinforce your devotion to upholding the truth. This is how human intuition can be dramatically enhanced. We can voluntarily orient our thoughts to the negative or positive. Once we identify our negative judgments and attitudes and let them go, we can be positive at all times in order to evolve spiritually and prepare ourselves to ascend into the next dimension. A matter of dimensions. Honing our intuition is only one of the enhanced abilities we'll be experiencing as we advance into the next dimension. But what exactly is a fourth or fifth dimensional being? First, let's remember that we live in third dimensional space. How do we know? Simply because we have three directions of free movement all around us. Those are left, right, back, forth, and up, down. Each dimension above third is a different degree of light and density. There are 11 levels of density. The ultimate goal is evolution on an individual basis and together as a species. Since humans are living in the third dimension, some of us might fear fourth dimensional beings because we do not understand them. We fear what we do not know, and fear is another of the negative emotions which will recede in the age of transparency. We will lose all negative emotions in the process and become truly happy people. Higher dimensional beings can read the auras of human beings and intuitively sense our energy fields, and they can literally see through our bodies. They are highly telepathic and are invisible to third dimensional beings. They possess more of a group mind. No one can possibly have a hidden agenda because they can see right through you. There are no secrets, no deceptions, no mystery whatsoever surrounding any conspiracy theory. Everything that has ever happened from all time becomes apparent in the age of transparency. Just like a sunbeam cannot separate itself from the sun, and a wave cannot separate itself from the sea, we cannot separate ourselves from one another. In the grand scheme of things, we are all part of a vast sea of love, one indivisible and transparent divine mind. But to arrive at this awareness is the biggest challenge for most free will individuals on Earth. Reading energy fields. All living things, including humans and even solid objects such as crystals, manifest an aura in a very subtle way. Often reading energy fields is held to be perceptible, spontaneous, and painless for some, and for others, it is a lifetime of devotion to training and practice. Such perceptions have been compared to the third eye of Hindu spirituality. Each color of the aura has a meaning, indicating a precise emotional state. Auras are not actual light, but a sensory reading or perception added to the reader's visual processing. Auras cannot be seen in complete darkness and cannot be seen unless some portion of the person or object emitting the aura can also be seen. Auras are connected with clairvoyance, the individual's spirit and their etheric body, or the lowest layer in the human energy field. The etheric body is in immediate contact with the physical body to sustain it and connect it with higher bodies. Auras are mental and emotional emanations. As we move into the fourth density, the ability to read each other's minds will become feasible. We will become clairvoyant, and we will communicate telepathically. Near instantaneous manifestations will occur at the speed of thought. You might begin to already notice your abilities as you walk past a stranger and can seemingly read everything about that person immediately. We will also gain increasingly acute glimpses into our future, more deja vu experiences and situations where we can knowingly alter future events. As a bumper sticker recommends, quote, "Do something today that your future self will thank you for," end quote. In the age of transparency, a new kind of court system will become necessary where all of the evidence will be apparent to everyone. The judge and jury will be clairvoyant and able to read the energy field of the accused. If we try to hide something, everyone nevertheless will see it. When humans are able to develop telepathy on a species level, we will have an exceptionally clear way of communicating with each other. All of the different languages on Earth will not matter, as every member and group of society will communicate telepathically. As a result, there will no longer be any hidden agendas. Everyone will know what the truth of any agenda might be, so it will become easier to solve problems. The New World Order wishes to keep the ordinary person locked in a state of third-dimensional fear and anger. What the powers that were dread the most and will stop at nothing to prevent is when people develop their higher dimensional abilities and can then see the world in a whole new light. At that time, our thoughts will create our own experience of reality. When the full range of history can be uncritically examined for all to see, the guilty parties who are still alive will become known for their crimes. Instead of inflicting violence on them, a truth and reconciliation panel should be established to determine a prison sentence and allow the rest of us to move on from the illusion they imposed upon us for so long.